Welcome back to the Root Cause podcast today. We're really excited. I have the honor to interview a peer of mine that I've been tracking for over 20 years. And, at Root Cause, we're just digging into the deep issues and opportunities that shape farming in America. And today we've got a special guest, and just really, really glad. I've heard him speak in over 4 states, including his annual trip to Martin, Tennessee. And his perspectives are always inspiring. You always have a few good basketball tips. And our shared distaste for speeding tickets in Greenfield. It's a tough one. And you said somebody passed you today and they got busted.
Oh, they nailed him quick on there.
Yeah. So without further ado, our guest is Dr. Dave Kohl, a renowned expert in agricultural finance and business management, professor at Virginia Tech. He's dedicated his professional, to teaching, traveled over 10,000 miles, more than 7,000 presentations, 2,500 articles, 4 books. Yeah. 4 books. His work blends academic rigor and real world wisdom along with insights. And
by the way, Kaleb, that's 10 million miles.
10 million.
Yeah. That. By the way, to all the folks out here, that's 18 trips to the moon and back. I made it back.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So how far is it to the moon?
Let's put it this way. People got to Google it, but it's about 250,000 miles.
Okay. Yeah. So, and in that, you've really worked with farmers, lenders, industry leaders, and approached the future of agriculture. And Dr. Kohl, it sure is my honor to have you on the podcast today.
Well, it's an honor to be down here. And again, you and I go way back. And, of course, you graduated from TPAP. That's the Ag Executive program down in Texas every year. And it's just an honor to be with you.
Yeah, and went to Iowa to hear you speak one time. It was 60 below zero. Really worried about myself on that trip. It's a little cold.
I remember that trip because Interstate 80 was a traffic nightmare.
It was a parking lot.
You best believe it.
Yeah. But we'd like to present you a hat.
Well, thank you.
Root Cause hat.
Thank you.
And also one of our big themes here on the farm is organics and soil health for farmer wealth. We really are passionate and believe this is the future of agriculture.
Oh, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, you're talking to the right guy on that one there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And so let's just jump in here. So let's start with your journey. You started in the northern part of New York. Just give us a little what's inspired you in this lifelong passion of agriculture, teaching, and economics.
Well, it's real interesting, Kaleb. I grew up about 45 miles north of Syracuse, New York, up in the snow belt. Last year, they had over 250 inches of snow. Now you know why I live in Virginia. Grew up on a dairy farm. The dairy farm still in the family. They milk about 100 cows. It's only about 2 miles off Lake Ontario. And small town. Matter of fact, my claim to fame was I wasn't college material, according to my guidance counselor, but my basketball coach told me a number of years later that the guidance counselor put that in my final senior analysis. He knew that would leak out and get me upset and get me motivated for life. So, Kaleb, sometimes you need a kick in the butt to get you going. But, it's real interesting. And here's a principle of life. You are what you were when you were when. A lot of your life philosophy is created between 4 and 16 years of age, the median age being about 9. And it was real interesting. As a 4 or 5-year-old, I used to go to the bank with my mom and dad as they went up and actually, negotiated loans at that time, et cetera, and it really intrigued me. And my grandmother gave me $1, and I'll never forget, Kaleb. We opened a bank account, and one of the things is I would work on the farm, and I could spend a certain part of it, about half of it, but 25% had to go into the bank, or actually 50% at that time. So I learned a lot of those principles earlier on, and I'd watch my mom keep the books, and she was very, very organized, and she would be kind of tough on my dad, particularly if the feed bill was going overdue, et cetera, et cetera. And then I transitioned into vocational agriculture and FFA. That's why I wasn't college material, because I didn't take all the college courses. I had an agricultural teacher, Mr. Green. Mr. Green was a World War II veteran. As a matter of fact, I just developed his dossier for the Hall of Fame for FFA for the 100th anniversary, and he was one of the initial inductees. But Mr. Green, you know what he had us do, Caleb? He had to fill out our balance sheets. My first personal balance sheet was $1,038 in assets, 0 in liabilities. Caleb, like any farmer, I overvalued 3 registered Holsteins just to get above 1,000, because I had a big ego. And my older brother, Rocky, he goes, never get on the bad side of Mr. Green, and when you know you're on the bad side, he'll call you up after class. And sure enough, he called me up after class, and I go, hey, I'll devalue those Holsteins. But you know what he said? He says, you know, you got the potential to earn the American farmer degree and be a state or a national officer, but we're going to need about 10,000 on that balance sheet 6 years from now. Well, 12,000, and we were able to receive those honors. But you know what Mr. Green did? And this is important for all your people watching this podcast. Sometimes you got to have a person from the outside help you establish your vision. Mm-hmm. And boy, he was instrumental. And by the way, life's not linear, because I remember a couple of those cows died. Also, my mom and dad didn't receive a milk check because the co-op went bankrupt. And so life is not going to be linear. And one of the things that'll have its uphills and downhills through the cycle. And then that went on to community college. And I was taking an economics class, and a teacher, he was working on his doctorate at Syracuse, PhD in economics, and he had us read an assignment. Well, guess what? It was an 8 o'clock class, and I was the only one that had read the assignment. The rest of the people couldn't answer. And all of a sudden, he called me after class. And he goes, well, who are you? And then we got talking about farming. And he had a John Deere tractor that he needed to sell. And he goes, well, what price should I put on it? Well, one of the things is he was a big mentor, got me interested in economics. And so the point I'm trying to get across here, I know that's a long story, but you know, sometimes in that early life, it sets the foundation. And also watching those teachers being the educators really got me motivated that, you know, I wanted to go on and, you know, eventually become an educator. I actually coached D3 basketball for a period of time before I went on and earned my master's and doctorate at Cornell. So that's a long story, Caleb, but it was a fun ride.
So Mr. Green he heavily influenced you.
Oh, heavily influenced, and I was so proud. When they called me, I was in the Kansas City airport, and they called me and they said, Mr. Green's going to the Hall of Fame. My biggest regret was I had a commitment and I couldn't go there for the ceremony, but his family was there, and some of my classmates went there, and so it was one of those things, you know, it kind of brought a tear in the eye, you know, on that. And so having that mentorship, very, very critical. Right.
Yeah, we all need good mentorship when we're young. And
well, we need it throughout life.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And as leaders, that's one responsibility to give a helping hand as well as receive it.
You best believe it, and you got to remember where you came from.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's amazing how fast you can go back.
No, exactly. And matter of fact, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to go back to upstate New York and, you know, just kind of travel around, because there was a lot of people that were very instrumental in my foundation of life.
Right. So, and you've done a lot of teaching, you know, 10,000 students all around the globe. Yeah. What have been some of the most eye-opening experiences in your journey?
You know, it's real interesting. I taught over 10,000 students at Virginia Tech and up at Cornell. And I got to tell you an interesting story. I had a student, and he was kind of a cut up. He was in ROTC, and but one of the things is he had difficulty taking my exams and everything, and so he was a classic C student. And one of the things is he was just glad to get through my class, and he put, see, students would actually put sayings up on my blackboard in my office. You know what he said? Dr. Kohl, always remember, the A student will be the researchers, the B students will be the managers, the C students will be the entrepreneurs, which the A and B students work for. And believe it or not, it came out true. He sold his company for $92 million. And he was very generous to me. He endowed a center and a chair in my name at Virginia Tech. And that's why I'm still at Virginia Tech, because I'm involved with the experiential learning type of activities, which I think is very true. That one always stands out. But you know, we just had the Alpha Gamma Rho 50th anniversary. 471 Rho and Rho mates came back, but many were my former students. And it's just great to see those. Matter of fact, one of my students had wrote a bestseller book, A Billion People in the Shadows, and he had muscular dystrophy, and he talked about that, and it became a bestseller. You know, one of my favorite times was when I took my 12 students to California, and we spent 10 days, and 8 of the students had never been on an airplane, and they went to California. They still say that experience, and I had them all facilitate the whole thing. In other words, they had to organize it. We went through drills if we had an earthquake, how we would contact people, driving and the whole thing. And that was very, very good, because you know what happened? We got students outside the box and realized that there was another part of the world. By the way, my coordinator now for all my travel, she was on that trip, and she goes, I didn't realize while we were coordinating that trip out in California that I'd be coordinating you around the world. So those are a couple of experiences, but boy, as an educator, I don't care what they do in life. It's so great to see them, see them, their families, sometimes their children, and now I see their grandchildren, in there, and you can't put a dollar sign on that.
No monetary value there. It's just about life experiences and yeah.
And I hope people that are listening to this and they're fully realize we had a number of FFA students in 4-H. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for 4-H and FFA. And one of the things I want to say is success in life is not a score on a standardized test. And oftentimes the FFA, the 4-H organizations give youngsters a purpose in life. And by the way, you know how my ag teacher got, one of the reasons he got in the Hall of Fame? We had the first female member in the United States of America. Her name was Barbara Nolly, and she still has her FFA jacket. And Mr. Green says, we're going to challenge FFA. And it got, he was criticized. Sometimes you're going to be criticized, you're in leadership. He was criticized at the state level, the national level, but 2 years later, FFA actually allowed, females in. Now they are a million in the organization.
Yep.
Half are female.
Half are female.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? All started in a little place called upstate New York.
That's totally amazing, and within the last, 60 years?
No, exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's unbelievable. So one thing I always appreciate about you is your energy, your motivation, and to educate and speak and just keep going. What keeps you going and pushing for more milestones?
It's not the milestones, it's the people, and it's the lifelong learners and the relationships that you have seen over the years. And yesterday I had a person at Martin come up to me and thank me. And they said, a number of years ago you talked about goal setting, and now I do my goal setting in writing. And they said, that little basic in life has really helped me. And, when we talk about goal setting, we think business, family, personal, mental, physical, and spiritual. It's little nuggets like that. Or watching the audience out there and, I was with the Amish the other day, 900 Amish. And one of the things, Eric, the weather guy, Eric Snodgrass, we always enjoyed the Amish groups because guess what? You don't have to compete against technology. But just to see them and their eye contact and different things, that gives you a chill. And somebody asked me yesterday, they said, do you still get nervous? You doggone right. In other words, you got to have a little bit of butterflies in your stomach just to kind of, keep you going. And, it takes preparation. And you'd say, well, he just does this off the cuff. It's kind of like here. I've got 7 pages of notes. Dr. Kahneman at Cornell, he says, to be effective educators, preparation, execution, and follow-up. And again, just seeing that and being with diverse groups around the world, it just motivates you.
Oh, no doubt. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's, as we talked about in some of our other talks, it's about just the culture of being in a crowd, the vibe.
Yeah. And, it's real interesting, the vibe yesterday. We're in a tough time, particularly row crop agriculture there. People were looking for the North Star. People were kind of coming in and wanting to be together. I didn't see a lot of technology in the audience yesterday, and that was very appealing. And also being with fellow speakers, Eric Snodgrass, just a nice guy, great guy, but there's other speakers, that you've been with me. And again, they're very, very down-to-earth, real principled type of people.
Right. Always something to learn. Mm-hmm. So let's move towards ag finance a little bit. Given your background, what financial trends should the farmer be keeping their eye on today?
I'll tell you one of the things, Caleb, I got to be realistic. We got a bifurcated agricultural economy. The row crop, grain industry, we're in a 3-year downturn. But if we hadn't had COVID, we've been down since 2013. And but then you look at livestock and particularly beef. One of the things that we're seeing is it's hotter than a pepper sprout. Johnny and June Carter Cash.
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to get across here is that this trend has been going on for a number of years, Caleb. And what's happened is, the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they've been very, very strategic. China invested $1.3 trillion in 68 countries around the world, many of them in that global south. And when I talk global south, it's Australia, New Zealand, it's South America, and Africa. Now it's paying dividends. It was kind of like our Marshall Plan after World War II, where we invested in Europe, Japan, et cetera, and hit our influence. And so what's happening is the rest of the world is catching up to us, and it's really tough, and it's a real, struggle. I worry about the livestock and the beef industry because you make your worst mistakes during the prosperous times. You know why? We get away from basics. We often get captivated by that emotion. We get into disorganization in finance. And so that, along with extremes in volatility. You got your tariffs, you got your sanctions and all this, but you've also got inflated cost. We have volatility in the extremes, and I call it managing in chaos. And what happens is you can either use it as your foe or your friend. Sometimes what will happen is the ones that are disciplined will be able to capitalize on that chaos. In other words, having the cash flow, having the famous operating plan backing up your cash flow plan, which includes not only production but marketing and et cetera, so you can mitigate the risk on the downside, capture the profits on the upside. And so that, I think, is going to be, very important in these times. I think another thing that's going to be important is having a lender that I call it the 6 C's of lending. They're conservative in good times, courageous in tough times, consistent though, and then They can calculate the numbers, but they can critically think about the numbers, but can they communicate those numbers? And, I'll hear producers say, well, I got to get my financials together to get the loan down at the bank or, Farm Credit or FSA. Well, you're getting your financials together to better manage your business. And so I think we're seeing that. So those are some of the financial dynamics that I see today on out there. And what I'm finding is, a win in the grain row crop right now might be break even. It might be minimizing your losses. It might be minimizing the draws from your working capital or knowing how much it's going to burn through your equity. Those type of elements. On the other side, for the enterprises that are profitable, it's having a profit plan. And I have the famous 60-30-10 rule. And take 60% of your profits, get efficient before you grow. Better is better before bigger is better. But be careful of efficiency, because oftentimes I see people know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Classic example, Boeing aircraft. They focus so much on the bottom line that the doors fall off the aircraft. Last year, my wife and I's vacation was ruined because Delta Airlines didn't invest in their computer software system. It cost them, what, $500 billion. And so you gotta, be efficient, but you still gotta be effective. Better is better before bigger is better. But one of the big things that's very important if you're in the profitable part of the cycle, build working capital. Now, Kaleb, you've heard me speak over the years. I used to say working capital is king. Well, I'm up in Ontario, Woodstock, Ontario, Canada. A Royal Bank loan officer came up to me and she goes, Dr. Kohl, you know how they'll say Dr. Kohl, eh? She goes, I want to challenge you on your term cash is king. And I go, okay. She goes, I believe cash is queen. And I go, And she goes, have you ever played chess or checkers? By the way, we used to not go to school for a week, so I'd play with the grandparents, chess and checkers. And what's the most important player on that chessboard? The queen. The queen's there to block adversity, take advantage of opportunity. And one of the things is life is a series of moves on the life, chessboard. And again, that queen is very pivotal. And so one of the things is if you build working capital, you're going to have to pay income tax. And don't get caught in the trap of spending $1 to save 20 cents on the taxes, but then you eat up your working capital or you have debt service payments. It's a fine balance. And then where's the 10% go? Actually, I suggest that you invest outside the farm.
Okay. Yeah.
Diversify those type of you've done it. Yeah. And you can talk for an experience on that one.
Yeah. Those outside investments are maybe the only thing keeps us plugging ahead. It's a different perspective.
Yeah. And the whole thing is, Kaleb, it gives you that diversification in that investment. But what I find is farmers and ranchers, they just want to plow that money right back, back into that business and that diversification. One of the things that I often recommend for family farm businesses is to have 50% of your retirement income that you're going to need come from outside investments from outside the farm. Because that gives you flexibility and agility.
Right, because we don't know what's coming in 50 years.
Exactly, and it's just like outsiders invest in our farmland. It's called that diversification strategy.
Totally. So let's move now towards the big hot word on the news is inflation. Yeah. And it kind of upsets me because we got a John Deere tractor sitting between us. And, the inflation has really been rampant in our farm equipment to the point it's almost laughable at the cost of it today. But from your perspective, interest rates, market uncertainty, affecting, the health of the farms right now. Inflation is a big player in all our lives. So,
yep. One of the things is we have the depressed price, Kaleb, and then we've got the inflated cost. And you think about the inflation. We talk about machinery and equipment, and we definitely see that on out there, and the cost of technology, et cetera, et cetera. But we got inflation on the input cost, and we've got inflation in insurance, and a lot of people, overlook. And in certain states, we've got inflation in land taxes, and all these have combined to create a negative type of margin, particularly for our row crop and our grain. And so that inflation has really, really been a killer. And the other thing right along with inflation, I know there's really pressure on the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates on the short end of the curve. You think about interest rates, and we go back a few years ago, we were in a 14-year period from about 2008 to 2022 with zero-bound interest rates. In other words, they were, very low interest rates. They've doubled now. Mm-hmm. So we've had inflation in interest rates. And, one of the things that really concerns me, and I want listeners to this podcast, the Fed can work on the short end of the curve, but what really concerns me right now is the long end of the curve. In other words, financing our treasuries and our bonds. And what has happened is 50% of those were financed by foreign countries. For example, Japan, China, Great Britain, etc. That's dropped to 30%. In other words, it's a classic example. If your business or our business is spending more than we're bringing in, eventually the lender's going to have to say, I got to have higher interest rates for the risk, or maybe I'm not going to,
put the money out.
Yeah, put the money out. And I think this is one of the concerns that I have is our fiscal policy in government is not sustainable. And one of the things that concerns me, $37 trillion of debt. Our deficits are running 1.8 to $2 trillion annually. Put this in perspective. In 2020, our national debt was what, 20 trillion? Now it's 37 trillion. What do we have to show for it? And the point I'm trying to get across is our long-term cost of money could, be higher. Now, a lot of people will say, well, the Fed's going to come to the rescue. Yeah, print money, and that's going to create inflation. And so we're getting betwixt and between, and we got to have some bold strategy, which we had 15 years ago. It was bipartisan. Simpson-Bowles, Alan Simpson, Republican out of Wyoming, Erskine-Bowles out of South Carolina, $3 of budget cuts for every dollar tax increase. We weren't bold enough to do it. And so I think, going back to your question on inflation, it's the individual cost, but it's also these interest rates and the potential for higher long-term interest rates. And everybody will ask me, well, where is the invisible fence? When do we hit that wall? Well, when the interest is greater in the military, interest on national debt's bigger in the military, but we're already there. And it's called Ferguson's Law. This guy, Scottish guy, a number of centuries ago, developed the law, and of course his grandson is, I think, at Stanford University. He basically says when interest and debt service is greater than the military budget, it's a society in decline. We got to do something, particularly as we saw the younger people there yesterday. We cannot burden them with our excesses.
Correct. Yeah, the excesses. That's
And can I share with you and I have a passion for finance, teaching it to our young people. If I had a course to teach in personal finance, you know who my first two groups would be? The U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives.
Are they teachable?
We better not go on there.
Okay. So on to the next question. Yeah. So this is a question I always just go because, that capital that's out here, it's going to find the best use. That's what you're supposed to do with it. In agriculture, we often see a slower and lower rate of return than many other industries. And how are we going to sustain investments in agriculture when we're not performing to where money could perform easier?
You know, when you look at and we're looking at land, land is what, 82% of the U.S. farm balance sheet, right? Much of it is owned by older individuals like myself. And when you look at investment in agriculture, there's two components. It's the dividend. In other words, that's the return. And then there's the capital appreciation or devaluation. It's real interesting. You go back to 1910. 79% of the time, farmland values have increased or remained, stable. Start of World War II, 88% of the time. So historically, land has been a good investment, not necessarily for the dividend, but for the capital appreciation. And what's happened is, on our land, it's taken a different dimension. We have more investors in now. Land for development, land for water, green energy, et cetera, et cetera. So we're seeing more returns than the sale of corn or soybeans or beef or, poultry or whatever it is. And so we're seeing those type of investments. One thing that, we've kind of discussed, you and I am very concerned about the consolidation of agriculture. That kind of keeps me up at night. And one of the things that's creating consolidation is called fragmentation. For example, I call them the waiters. It is the non-farm kids that may have moved to Nashville or Kansas City or Minneapolis, St. Paul. And one of the things is they're waiting for mom and dad and grandpa and grandma to die. And the person that's on that business, and I don't like the word sweat equity. They put not only sweat equity, but management and built the equity of that business, built that value of the business. They have to buy those folks out, and they can't afford to buy them out. And so what happens is it fragments the farm. Of course, the non-farm individuals, siblings, basically want to pay off their mortgage. But unfortunately, you know what happens? I want to give you this stat. You inherit $100,000. On average, you'll spend it in 17 months and have nothing to show for it. Easy come, easy go. And so the thing is, the youngster or the person that's on the farm, they not only have the financial pressure to carry that farm business on, but they have the legacy pressure. I'm going to be the generation that's going to lose this, and it creates a lot of mental health problems.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very strong issue that we really don't want to talk about in agriculture is the mental health issue, isn't it?
It is really, really big. And right along with that, it's the physical health. You got to have the physical and the mental health. And it's something that'll creep up on you because all of a sudden you keep avoiding it, and then you hit the invisible fence. And then that filters over to your spouse or to your children or to the communities. And so this is why, and you were a graduate of TFAP, I'm a big believer of advisory teams.
Yeah.
To kind of, yesterday people were there trying to, kind of make sense. And sometimes you've got to find out that, other people are facing the same issues that you are out there. And it's called reality common sense.
Yeah. And it's a big struggle. So that 82% of land's on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Do we know how much of that is being affected by the waiter movement? I mean, is it?
I can't give you
20%, 50.
I'm going to throw this one out. After World War II or around World War II, 17% of our farm ground was rented leased. I think it's up around 60%. And the thing is, much of the farmland is held by elderly female, and oftentimes they'll outlive the male. I call them granny landlords. They'll outlive the males by on average 7 years. And so I'm going to give you a ballpark. I'll bet you it's half of it.
Okay.
But to all the academics out here, don't go now say Dave Kohl says this, but it's just kind of a gut feel because, many of the extended families, the young people left the farm, and particularly during the 1980s, and now they're in that position to inherit that. And so I would say it might be around 50% of that.
And they kind of outlive the men by 7 years.
Yeah. No, on average, a female will outlive a male 7 years. It's starting to drop back a little bit, but again, that gives you that 7 years. And Caleb, I heard a speaker say this in Indiana the other day. He said, well, the next generation is going to inherit something like 90 trillion dollars worth of wealth. Okay, that's not billion, that's trillion in the United States. And that's the whole economy. You know what I told him? I says, unfortunately, half of that wealth is going to be eaten up by late life healthcare costs. 70% of your healthcare costs occur in your last 6 months of life.
Right.
And then the other thing is, many people are basically going to squander that money away.
Yep. And when you look back, you have a regret. So
Well, and you know what the other thing is? The families don't spend holidays together, or 4th of July, together, et cetera. It breaks families up personally, and that's a tragedy.
Right. So what is one of the biggest mistakes you see ag producers making when managing their finances? Just that?
But can I just share with you? Disorganization. And even the big farms. Oh, I'm going to turn the finances over to the CPA, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things is disorganization and not taking ownership of the numbers. And what will happen is they oftentimes will look at and examine the numbers once a year for tax reasons. I'm a big believer, and I know you're a big believer, that, for example, our best management practice at the creamery, weekly cash flows. Weekly cash flows.
So that is a disadvantage in agriculture because, you normally get, about 40 crops?
Yeah.
And you get 52 chances to reset your financial parameters a year. It's a big disconnect for our financial reality in row crop agriculture.
Well, Caleb, I'll just kind of come back. I had a Montana beef producer challenge me last winter. Had a belt buckle bigger than his hat, but well, they're good people in Montana. But what's real interesting, he says, well, I don't need to do a monthly or quarterly cash flow because I only have 1 or 2 revenue streams a year. I says, your expenses are throughout the year. I says, sir, I'm sorry, you still need either a monthly or a quarterly cash flow because you know what it allows you to do? Remember Peyton Manning, the old quarterback? He'd go up to the line of scrimmage.
You're in Tennessee.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I know.
We know Peyton.
And he beat Virginia Tech, too, in a bowl game. But, Peyton Manning would go up and he'd call Omaha. Well, your cash flow statement is your game plan so that when you go up to that line of scrimmage and you see something different that's coming at you, you can call your Omaha and call it audible. We do it all the time. And can I just share with you a big mistake, a number of producers, they don't develop a projected cash flow. Oh, they'll throw their hands up and say, oh, I don't know what's going to happen to tariffs or sanctions or what's going to happen to input cost. And one of the things that I often say, then get your spreadsheets out and do some scenario analysis. And they'll say, well, I don't know how to do a spreadsheet. Well, get your kids to do it or whatever. And the thing is, financial sensitivity analysis is so critical. Why? Because it gives you the guardrails for objective decision making. And I like to do a worst case, average, best case, but at our creamery, the management team challenged us. They did the best of the best. In other words, best wasn't good enough. In other words, we want to stretch those goals. And believe it or not, the past 3 years, about 80% of the time, they've exceeded the best of the best. So when a row crop farmer tells me, annual cash flow do, no. You're going to have a monthly and a quarter. And here's the thing. You develop the plan, you execute that plan, but you monitor it. And that's the key so that you can do those audibles, throughout the year, Caleb. Do you agree with me on that one?
Yeah. So the monitoring is the hardest part, inspect what you expect. And, I guess yesterday you walked on my feet the most with the operational plan because you can have the numbers, but if you don't have it written out how this affects. It's very intrinsic. We're operating family farms, but they're businesses, and they're very some very large businesses, and so we're not taking all steps: the budget, the operation plan, the communication with owners, employees, lenders, vendors. So we need to do so much better communication. And yeah.
And you see, 80% of a business plan is a cash flow plan, but then you've got to have the guts of it. You've got to have that operational plan to back up your cash flow plan. And again, you're thinking through your schedule of expenses. When are you going to put you had to, actually replant, et cetera, and you kind of build some of those contingencies in. But I find that global cash flow or enterprise cash flow can be a great communication tool. and as well as I do, you've taken many management classes, et cetera. Communications often breaks down. And again, people have to know, how they impact the eventual bottom line out there.
Yeah. And, the ink is red. It's not a lot of fun, but it's got to be done.
No, it is. And when that ink is red, let me come back to it. A win might be to minimize those losses, right?
Yep.
And then sometimes what you got to do is sit down annually, kind of look at it, and you do the famous SWOT analysis. In other words, what's our strengths, what's our weaknesses, what's our opportunities and threats. And Caleb, this is where you bring your whole team in. The word I do despise these days is C-suite. The big, management CEOs and their big management team. You got to remember, some of the best ideas come from the front line because those people are out there. And remember, change occurs bottom up, not top down. And so engaging people in that, once annually or twice annually, it makes that cash flow kind of come to life. And then doing the but what if analysis. And then you'd say, I wonder if it gets outside the guardrail. I'll hear that. Well, that's where you got your queen on your chessboard, your working capital and liquidity. And then, I wonder if I run out of that. And that's where you have to come back and look at your equity.
Right.
And evaluate it.
Yeah. So here's a new question of mine. It's one we've talked about, but kind of I'm going to reframe it based on some stuff I've learned yesterday and this morning. So, I think we all agree that a nation's ability to feed itself is our first line of national defense. But here we said today, since COVID, our national debt has gone from 20 to 37 trillion.
Yeah.
And man, if you've ever done the math on the commas and the time, it's really amazing what the trillion leap does. How do we as agricultural producers, because we're, in my farming career, I'd say 50% of the time we've been at or under the break-even bubble. Mm-hmm. How do we keep the American people solidly behind us, or do we lose them?
Well, one of the things is there's no successful culture in the world or society without success in agriculture. And it's the foundation behind the success of any country in the world. And behind that is also entrepreneurism. Farmers and ranchers were the original entrepreneurs. And so my point is, we're going to have a challenge here. You know why? Since the turn of the century, 2000, 73% of Americans were urbanites. Now it's 84%. And so we have that less connection to rural areas. And you know what happens when you move to an urban area? People can't see the stars and horizon. And so they get a very narrow perspective. We also have this whole element, and I can feel it. COVID, we were the champions. We kept food in the grocery stores, kept people fueled, et cetera, et cetera. Now there's an anti-segment against agriculture. Well, you're getting all the government supports and all that type of thing. I really believe that one of the things is each and every farmer and rancher, and we do it in our business as well, we have a community day where we invite the community on out. And, one of the things is we kind of show them what we do, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the day, you know what they often say? We want to see you guys stay in business. and so, again, trying to build that, liaison with that non-farm community critical. I think untapped area is our 4-H and FFA kids. Can I just share with you? I think it's about 20% of the chapters are in urban areas now.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I had a big executive at a big processing business put me down at a state governor's conference. I basically said, let's engage 4-H and FFA, let's use technology, et cetera, and start with that generation. You know what that CEO said? Well, that Dr. Kohl from Virginia Tech's all wrong. It's just farm kids talking to farm kids. Boy, I came back to him and I says, FFA kids are in the urban. Boy, I put him down, in that that's that perspective out there. And I think what we can do is do more and more of that type of engagement. And you know what agriculture producers will tell me? When they invite the public to kind of come in the business, it's kind of uplifting. And so I think each and every one of us have to play that role. But one of the things that it's a challenge throughout the world as the world urbanizes now, we're getting more and more distance. But let me reiterate, if you look at the Great Depression, you look at how Hitler was able to gain power in Germany, it was because we had food shortages or potential food shortages out there. And so this is where, you've got this shirt that basically says soil and water health. I'll tell you, every American, water health and soil health is critical. And I think one of the things we got to start looking around the curve and basically say, soil and water health. Because if you have a healthy soil, you got a healthy plant, animal, human being, and a healthy environment. And the big trend that's going to be coming in the future is the younger generation you're going to see collaboration of the ag field and the medical field. And one of the things is they're very powerful influence. And the younger generation is going to say, hey, we aren't going to pop a pill to, become healthy. It's what we eat. And, you know what's going to drive it? AI. Because within 5 years, we're going to be able to customize meals, a health plan for you and I, any individual listening to this podcast on out there. And so agriculture, the next turning is going to be those two type of elements, soil and water health, and also how it relates to AI, artificial, ChatGPT. We're all getting exposed to it. And then you know what it's going to require? Educational plan. And well-designed, like these podcasts, well-designed information back to individuals is going to be real critical.
Yeah. So a real exciting part of row crop agriculture today for me is we really may be key players in human being health and the climate issue, the two main issues on Earth. So let's, that is a very positive opportunity for us. And
absolutely. And sometimes they're very economical. I know that's one of the big concentrations we have on our farms and the farms that produce for our creamery. Soil and water health is very, very critical. And guess what? Our landlords notice it. And the neighbors notice it. And so I think there's a real, I know we're kind of in a depressing, particularly in row crop and grain, we're kind of in a depressing era, but there's a lot of potential on out there. So those are two positives that I really see. Can I tell you another positive that's out there?
Please.
When I was out there with Warren Buffett's deal, and I finally went to his deal, but meet with a bunch of venture capitalists from around the world. We have medical doctors there. You know what they're saying? We're too carb heavy these days. We've got about 4-to-1 carb protein ratio. They said we got to move that back toward the 1-to-1. You know what one of the answers is? Dense protein. What produces dense protein? Beef animals, pork, et cetera, much more than even chicken and fish. And so all these elements are going to be changing on out there. And this younger generation, you know what they're going to do? Big pharma backlash. There's a quote for you. Big pharma, not farming, big pharma backlash. And again, the soil, the water health, meshing the medical industry with the ag industry, and also getting our stories on out there and communicating them, particularly with the next gen, not only here, but worldwide.
Yeah, it's a global issue.
It's a global issue.
Yeah, and we had a pharmacist on the episode before, and he was talking about the amount of training that doctors and pharmacists, the medical field, get for nutrition. It's very, very minimal of their training.
Can I share with you 2 things that the medical profession doesn't do? That's number 1. Number 2, they aren't trained to communicate. Matter of fact, I mentioned it at the conference. It's called the 18-second rule. Go to your doctor the next time. They'll ask how you doing and all that. On average, they'll interrupt you in 18 seconds. The good doctor listens for a minute. Matter of fact, our medical profession is so geeky into their silos, they don't see the holistic body, and they don't listen. We're going to get pushback from the medical industry on that one.
Yeah, we do need a cure for stubborn hard-headedness.
Well, we all do. Even myself out here.
We need a cure, So, this is a little different kind of question, but political polarization continues to shape our nation. From your perspective, what opportunities or challenges do each side of the political spectrum offer that we just might be overlooking in the flyover states?
I don't know, but I mentioned it yesterday, and again, my political affiliation's right in the middle. And I'll be very blunt. We have what I call state capitalism in the United States of America, no different than what's going on in China. Xi Jinping, he basically says to Jack Ma, I'm going to fine you. You're going to do this. Well, we have the same thing going on here in the United States. They're basically say, we're going to invest in this sector. We're going to invest in this sector. I'm going to look you square in the eye, Caleb. America was built on entrepreneurism, not big corporate businesses. And another thing that we've got to do, we've got to have statesmen. What are statesmen? Ronald Reagan met with Tip O'Neill on the other side. President Bill Clinton met with, Newt Gingrich. And again, we were looking at not for yourself, but for the country. Another thing that needs to be corrected, and I'm being blunt here, probably going to get in trouble, we got too much executive power. It's gone run amok. You know what the other thing is? Our primary systems are broke. It crowds out the people in the middle that want someone from the middle. It hits the extremes on both sides. And one of the things that we're going to have to do is our process is too long, too much money involved. And what I'm trying to say is a theme that I'm seeing that I don't like is profits and politics over people. And it's a trend that if you read the book, The Fourth Turning, I'm going to recommend it for folks. Let's put it this way. It's a classic. It's that 100-year cycle that we're going through. This next gen, positive way, I think is going to bring that back together. And you know what I heard at the conference yesterday? There was a bunch of us older folks with gray hair or no hair there. You know what one of our big concerns was, Caleb? We're not leaving this country better than when we entered it.
Yep.
And I'm worried about that. And so, but if you go back and you look at it, we predicted this in 1959. What happened in 1959? President Eisenhower said, be aware of the military-industrial complex. But he also said, there's this thing called a computer. He said, it's going to create the information age. And you know what he said? It's got the potential to fragment society. And we're seeing it play out a number of years later. And so we're going through that cycle. And what we've got to do is we've got to kind of draw together. And we haven't made friends around the world here recent times. You just don't go calling the neighbors to the north, another state and different things. Here's the point, Caleb. When you develop relationships, and you know this, you're in a relationship business here. It's a stairs up, elevator down. In other words, you make a mistake, boy, it can destroy relationships very quickly. And Cal, can I just tell you this? This whole idea of the United States competing against the rest of the world, it should be North American competing against the rest of the world. We need Canada, Mexico, and us. You put us together, we're 5% of the world population, 29% of the world economy. And here's what I see coming in 2030, 2035. We're going to be competing as global economic blocks. North American bloc, European bloc, Global South, Asian bloc. And what will happen is this will kind of change that tide. So we got some dynamics that are going to have to be altered, but you watch, disruption is going to create disruption. And this will be the last group of baby boomer, older politicians going through. So we need some fresh blood.
That's well said. Just a whole new perspective.
And exactly, but also what's good for the country.
Yeah.
Rather than good for it. And get the whole idea of all this big money, big, power, trying to control.
Yep. So you've been to countless countries and communities. What do you see the core difference between thriving communities and struggling?
One of the things is travel. Let's just take the United States of America. You know what I often look for? A good educational system. They'll often have a lender or a bank or champions in the community that invest back into the community. You know what another one is? I used to travel around the United States, and you know what a growing rural community was? Golden Arches or, Taco Bell, etc. Now I see a health workout areas.
Oh, yeah.
No. As a matter of fact, Bruning, Nebraska, 273 people. Frank Bruning, he passed away a few years ago. He's a banker there. The whole town's named after the family. He and his son Fred would take me around, and they'd take me out to the feedlot. And he goes, well, we're going to take a special trip today. Where are we going? We're going to the morgue. Like, oh. Well, guess what? They were innovative enough to turn the morgue into a 24/7 workout area. And what has that done? It's attracted a lot of youth back there. Can I tell you another one? And this gets me going, even on our farms. We've got to have internet. We are a third world country. I can get better internet in Africa or in other areas of the world than they can here in the United States of America. It's a travesty. Our politicians need their head examined on that one right there.
Yeah, because that is the financial interstate.
Exactly. And we're coming into this information age with AI and all this. And if you want people to come back, and so that's an element. And a natural amenity can be out there as well. And again, you need your road structure. Those are 5 attributes that I often find that I'll see in a thriving type of rural community. And can I tell you, on my young farmers and ranchers, I do about 10 to 12 multiple day groups, annually. One of the things that I'm finding is, many young farmers and ranchers will go back into family businesses, but I'm seeing more agro-entrepreneurs. The farm, but then they got gigs. It's great. And you know what they'll tell me? It's not only the money, but we're out there networking, getting new ideas. But, Caleb, you know who the new group is coming in? Down in Texas. Doing a young farmer program down there. 20% of the group were what I call boomerangers. There are people somewhere between 40 and 60 coming back farming and ranching. I was in Bad Axe, Michigan, and yes, there is a Bad Axe, Michigan. I'm up there doing a young farmer deal, and 2 Ford Motor Company people had retired. They were into organic grain farming. And I says, well, what was the benefit of Ford Motor Company? And they said we had to develop SOPs, standard operating procedures, and we know how to link up with customers out there. Folks, I'm real enthusiastic about the younger type of farmers, but they're going to do it, and ranchers, they're going to do it a whole lot different than when I was growing up or even when you were growing up.
Yeah.
And so this provides that what I call dynamic juice coming into the agriculture arena.
Yep. So this, I'm going to go back to one of your other things. China made the huge investment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so are there international models or ideas you think the U.S. should be investing in at this point, so that we don't lose more ground to them in that space?
I think one of the things that's going to be very, very critical is that this whole idea of meshing the medical field with the agriculture field, Caleb, is going to be real critical. And I think sometimes what we have to do is take a little field trip, a road trip, go to Europe, go to Italy, see what they're doing as far as food programs. Go to Australia and New Zealand. A number of years ago, I was down in Mildura, Australia. Guy had a 25,000-acre farm, commodity producer, cotton, wheat. But you know what was so impressive? He knew where every bale of cotton was producing, the ingredients in it, and he was getting a 20% premium in the world marketplace because he had transparency. And so what I'm trying to get across is sometimes it takes what I call a global field trip, kind of see what's going on out there. And then you think about, Caleb, $1 in $5 net farm income comes from export markets. The general economy is approximately 10%. We are export driven, particularly if you're in the commodity type of business. And what we've got to do is use some of our innovation and different things to be able to align up to that consumer worldwide that wants our products and services, but fully realize that, everybody thinks Brazil's the 800-pound gorilla. You got to remember when I used to come to Tennessee, Martin, and I said Brazil's going to be up and coming? I'll never forget some of the folks in the audience said, oh, they don't have the infrastructure. They got the infrastructure because China's invested in it. Same thing's occurring in Africa now. Africa could be Brazil in the next few years. And so we got to look at this. So the technology, the innovation, and you know what I've done? Too bad I didn't have it for this. I've done a SWOT analysis on the United States of America. You went to TPAP.
Yes.
And you guys had to do a SWOT analysis on your business here, right? Well, I kind of looked it up, and I said, has anybody ever done a SWOT analysis on the United States of America? Well, Brookings Institution, they did quasi. I've done a SWOT analysis on the United States of America. That'd be another podcast that we could get together for. But one of the things is we got to build on those strengths and those opportunities. And some of the opportunities I do see is in the medical field, the health, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. So what financial habits should the next generation of farmers, what should we be doing today? Because today you're either a profitable farm, you're a farm that's just getting by, or you're a farm that's losing money. Or where in each of those quadrants, what's the most important?
You've been to TPAP. You're a graduate of TPAP. The founder of that program, Dr. Danny Kleinflower, he's passed away, a good friend of mine. He had a famous quote that works for all three of those segments. You got to be a 5%er. And what is it? In other words, there's no such thing as a magic silver bullet, the next big thing. Well, I've seen those catfish, llamas, emus, hemp. We can kind of go. It's about doing the boring things. It's about being a 5%er. In other words, 5% better in production, 5% better in financial efficiency, but still being effective, 5% better in marketing and risk management, 5% better in taking ownership of course, your finance. But you know what the big one's going to be? Often overlooked, human resources. And I had it put bluntly up in New Hampshire. You were just up in Canandaigua, New York. Well, I was up in New Hampshire. I had a dairy farmer come up to me, or he stood up in the audience. It was a young farmer audience, and he says, I made money by producing more for my dairy cows. He says, my daughter, who's back in business with me and managing now, she is going to make money through human collaboration. And it's not only the workforce, but it's also engaging with the non-farm public, the consumer, being involved with some, advisory boards or being on some of the committees that can kind of move and shake. And so here's my big point. All three of the segments that you just talked about, what are three ways or three things that you're going to continue to be a 5%er? What are three to improve? But here comes the big one.
Yeah.
What are the three things you're going to drop? See, we add on, Caleb, and we just get overwhelmed. So it's called the 3-3-3 rule.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Because I'll speak on, just leaders in agriculture. We're not good at delegation. Mm-hmm. And that leads us to mistakes and, other things. So that is one of our core weaknesses. So not only do we need to drop things, we need to delegate.
And let's put it this way. The problem is sometimes we're the founders of the business and we know what it took, but sometimes there's, different ways to accomplish things. And people are going to make mistakes. But one thing I learned from at basketball camp under Bob Knight was you don't make the same mistake twice or you'd have a 6'4" gentleman in your face. He had bad breath. No, I'm joking. Yeah. But the whole thing is, if you do make a mistake, make it quick and kind of move on. But we have got to delegate. At TPAP, a number of years ago, I used to have you guys fill out your hours. You worked on your business. Well, had this gentleman from Kansas. He had worked 4,000 hours on his business, and I said, don't violate the 2,500, 3,000 hour rule. That's 250 to 300 10-hour days in business. Boy, he went off on me in the class. And boy, he says, oh, you're all wrong, blah, blah, blah. I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And he kind of embarrassed me in front of class. And then, of course, it was a 2-year program, you know. And he didn't show up the next year. I go, great. And then all of a sudden, 5 years, he was like Freddy Krueger. He was back in class. And it was that elevated classroom. And I said, I'm going to avoid the time management rule. But I says, I got to do it for transparency. So I mentioned it. And his hand went up in the back of the room. And I go, I go, comment? And he goes, can I come up and take the podium? I didn't know what he was going to say. And you know what he said? He said, this guy challenged me. And he said, I was working 4,200 hours a year. He said, one of the things is I went back and I delegated. And he said, I had to get rid of some of the toxic people, get good people around. He says, I'm back down to about 2,600 hours a year. I'm 4 times more profitable. Got a chance to see my wife, my children, and my grandchildren. And by the way, that was probably one of my big nuggets from TPAP that as an educator I took away. And thank goodness, I didn't know what he was going to say, Caleb, but I took the risk.
Yeah. So on a personal note, I'm 30 years into my farming career. God, I don't know how.
You don't look it.
Yeah, well, I'm here. And, one of my biggest regrets is, we've overcomplicated the financial systems in our business. And, we really hadn't done budget to actuals. And I've tried everything from software to hiring it out to just pen and paper, but nothing's really stuck. It's been tough. And I think it leads a lot of our problems in this space, making bad decisions with bad numbers, just spur of the moment decisions. And it led me and my team, we've built an app, to work on that, to help people that we're bringing out to the market. And, it's rootedbee.com, and just look us up. But it's the most important piece of equipment on the farm. And it does so much communicating, and it's very important going forward. And it's the first tool you got to have.
I mean, absolutely. And I'm glad you're doing that, because right now I find that financial disorganization, not taking ownership of the numbers, not taking the necessary time to look at those numbers, and maybe having a coach along the way, and the coach could be financial advisor, it could be a peer. Let's put it this way: we're walking proof at the creamery, and one of the things is, sometimes I'm not saying this happened at the creamery. I'm seeing more fraudulent activities, money disappearing here, money disappearing there, et cetera, and or we get the money under the table, et cetera. Financial disorganization and having a financial system, which you guys are, putting out there. Let's put it this way: it's just as important as making that investment in a combine or a tractor. And again, what I find is it helps so much on communications. Let me reiterate, you don't develop those financials for your lender. Yeah, you do, but you develop them for your business. And you've got to do what I call REM: respond, execute, and monitor.
RAM.
Yep, REM.
Yeah.
No, it's REM. Respond, execute, and monitor.
Yep.
Boy, I'm like a basketball coach here. Got my hands are going, et cetera.
Yeah. So my next question leads me to something you always go over in your talks, and I guess you did yesterday, Mr. Dr. Kohl, we can't overcome a big black swan event. So what's worrying you? What's in front of us? And it needs to be reasonable because we're just not up for a big event.
Well, the whole thing is, you can have black swans in your business, or you can have global black swans. And you got me thinking about that one. Can I give you a black swan in your business? You know what we did at the creamery? We did the famous drop dead exercise. We put everybody's name in the table. And, one of the younger business owners, he says, we got a lot of salt down at the end of the table. We're having lunch. In other words, we had a lot of gray hairs. And he says, we got to get embarked on the transition plans. So I says, everybody put your name in the table. And I kind of fixed the election. And so I pulled his name out. And I go, David, you're dead. Now what are we going to do? And he started talking. I says, no, we've already had the funeral. You're gone. You have to leave the room. That was very instrumental. Very instrumental. In other words, and oftentimes it's not the older person. Sometimes it's the youngest person. So that's a black swan event. And somebody got on to me, that's too negative, drop dead exercise. Well, if you win the $100 million lottery, what are you going to do? Okay, yeah. So you can hit that.
Lose it in 17 months.
Boy, that's the, you know what I'm worried about? And I'm sorry, I'm going down a rabbit hole. I'm worried about all these athletes getting all this quick money. We're going to have a number of mental health problems with our athletic community, and it's destroying sports because the kids aren't there for the passion. Just like farming, sometimes that quick money builds ego. Sometimes discipline, which your system has, it builds the character, the resiliency, the nimbleness, and the agility. And that's the key. Big picture black swan, you know what I mentioned yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see
with Mr. Snodgrass's thing about with his parents. I mean, there's got to be some.
Tell him about that. Wasn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah. So he talked into a software, and then the software through AI made up a story.
Made up his weather forecast.
And made up his weather forecast and his own parents.
He sent it to the parents.
The parents, and they thought it was him.
Yeah, they said, your weather forecast was great. It wasn't him.
It wasn't.
It was AI.
Yeah.
Folks, we're going to have an AI 9/11. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's really, you know what it's going to do? Technology goes through 3 stages. Sorry to ramble on. You go through the infatuation stage. We're infatuation stage as far as AI. And then you'll have a black swan or unusual event that creates disillusionment. And then that makes us kind of critically think and we figure it out. And Eric, when I was at Warren Buffett's deal, Warren put AI Warren Buffett up there. I'll never forget it. And then the regular Warren, you couldn't tell the difference. You know what, Warren Buffett, now he's 94, he turned around and he says, that's going to be a problem. Yeah. And it's going to impact our educational system. Your wife's a teacher and an educator. It's going to impact our university systems right on up through. So that one is coming at us. Hell, when you go back and look at AI. It had a human IQ of 80 in 2016, 2017. By 2020, it was 100. By 2024, it was 120, or 2024, it was 124. By 2028, it'll be 1,200. The machine will learn off the machine. It's just accelerating.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. I actually put another one down. I'm worried about disease breakout, either in plant or animal, spreading that will create shortages in the world and create society disruption. And, you know, as the speaker said there the night before, 24 hours you get hungry, but boy, if you're hungry for 72 hours, you start getting violent, and particularly with people living in urban areas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing feat every day that we get the food where, I mean, we go to the grocery store, it's got the in season stuff, the out season, it's kind of amazing.
No, it really is. And I got thinking back to when I was growing up. Let's put it this way. We didn't have all the grocery choices, and I'll never forget, people from the Soviet Union would come over and visit the neighboring dairy farm because it was a big progressive farm. You know where the first trip they wanted to go to? Our grocery stores. Because they go, wow, look at all. And that was, you know, back 60, 70 years ago, right?
Right.
And now look at what it's all about.
Yeah. You know, I was telling you about going in the grocery store in Canandaigua, and I mean, it was an experience.
The Wegmans stores. Any of it, I'm going to give a shout out for Wegmans. It's one of the top grocery stores in the world. And
you
it's
said very family.
Yeah, it's very family oriented. I have to give transparency. We do market our milk in the southern, Wegman stores. But boy, if any of you look it up, the Wegman story. Tom Peters, the guy that wrote In Search of Excellence, Passion for Customers, he basically talks about Wegmans in some of his podcasts out there.
Right. So we're going all the way around the world. What is what's your big thought for ag leaders today, and what should you be doing to take care of yourself and preparing for the future and growing these businesses?
I think one of the things on ag leadership is just a couple of things. Make the unremarkable remarkable. There's too much power in the C-suites. I get these corporations, they bug me. A good leader is a good listener. God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth. He wants us to listen twice as much as we speak. But you also have to observe nonverbal communication. Can I tell you another thing? Understand history and cultures of the world. This is one of the things. When I go to Canada or go to other areas of the world, they understand the U.S. history better than we do. And sometimes if you don't understand history, you'll make the mistakes. Understand culture and understand how that culture evolved. Good leaders will do that. I said this before, I'll say it again. Good leaders realize that change occurs bottom up, not top down. Can I give you a classic example of leadership failure? We tried to invoke the metric system in the United States way back in the 1970s. We still don't have the metric system because it was perceived to be top down. That is very, very critical. As far as being a leader, you got to take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. I find good leaders, they will read or listen to podcasts like this, or, you're in your tractor, et cetera, et cetera.
Leading is reading.
Oh, if you're going to lead, you got to read. Yeah. And by the way, at Warren Buffett's conference, what'd they say? 90% of Americans read less than 1 book a year. The others will read 4 books. Eric Snodgrass, I'm with him on about 40 programs. You ought to be in the airport with him. He's in the bookstore, or he's got a book and he's reading. Last I knew, he'd read over 50 books this year. And I know I try to read. I read about 2 hours a day.
Right.
And it's one. And you know what you got to do? Shut that technology off. And it's going beep 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 beep. Shut it off. Hear the silence. And a good leader will do that. You know what the other thing, a good leader, they remember where they came from. Yeah. And sometimes they get caught up with their ego, et cetera, et cetera. And good leader will surround themselves with good people. Matter of fact, you get good people actually better than you are, and you get out of their way. and
Yeah.
and what do you think as far as leadership? And again, you've been to TPAP, you've been to Dave Ramsey's deal,
Yeah.
and kind of like that. Do you see some of the similar characteristics?
Yeah. So the doing and not, you do things and promote that and being an ear to the other people. And so, yeah, it's very challenging to think about when you have an organization and you're trying to make decisions that affects the whole team. And so just constant communication is probably the strongest thing and that we're working on here for leadership.
Well, another thing too, Kaleb, I like to surround myself with positive people, or sometimes people will challenge me,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And you ought to be with Eric and I in a rental car. We were going from the Imperial Valley back to San Diego. We were talking about everything under the sun. I was challenging some of the weather things. He was challenging some of the economic things. I don't have time for what I call value detractors. In other words, we call them energy vampires. You got to stamp out energy vampires. In other words, they'll just drain you.
Right.
And again, you got to be really, really careful of that whole type of element. And I'll make a suggestion. I had my 8 habits yesterday that I think are real critical. One is drink this stuff, particularly early in the morning. Do a little bit of exercise. Walk or, different things. Watch your diet. I got a problem on that. I think Little Debbie's are made in Tennessee, and that's one of my big problems. But also take a couple power naps a day. People really like that one. It increases your energy out there. Have a good support network. Also read, but also, and it's something that you and your wife are working on, give people purpose. For the older generation, oftentimes if they don't have purpose, you'll see their mental, physical health go down rapidly. But give young people a purpose. Very, very critical. Build that esteem. And then, of course, spiritual, et cetera, et cetera. You follow those 8 habits in life, it'll keep you going.
Yeah, that's a full-time job, isn't it?
No, it is. It is, but it's fun type of job. This morning, I was up at 4 a.m., there in Tennessee Martin. I went over and, worked out about an hour and a half. And, actually I was preparing for this morning, get my mental head on. And also I wanted to get down here so I didn't get pulled over in Greenfield and be able to do it.
So we have a unique thing in Trenton. Our speed limit is 31. So
what is that all about? Okay.
Well, we just want to be different.
No, 31. And there used to be a football player for the Green Bay Packers, Jim Taylor, who won 31. I says, is Jim Taylor from here? Or, what is the 31? I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's just we just want to be different.
Well, I need to take a picture of that because the 31, let's put it this way, they need to boost it up to 32.
Yeah, there we go. So, well, you got 7 pages of notes. I'm getting down to my last couple questions. Anything you want to present or promote?
Well, all I can say is it's an honor to be with you. The systems that you're talking about are going to be needed, but it's not only going to be financial, but it will make you stronger mentally. And it'll kind of give you a type of purpose. I wanted to ask you, you were a graduate of TPAP. Was that a valuable program? I've been involved with TPAP. I guess I'm the last person standing there that was one of the original instructors. Was that a valuable educational experience?
Very much so. So unbelievable learning. It's it's a real regiment. It's early in the morning to late at night, and it's 7 full days, I believe. So the learnings there from Dig Whitman, all the presenters. I don't remember the lady's name, and one of the bigger takeaways I got from it was storytelling. Mm-hmm. We're really not good at telling our story, and I thought that was kind of a waste of an hour. But it really wasn't. So learned a lot there, just all of that stuff. But really, just the time with other people, and built some strong relationships since then. Some people I talk to, at least weekly, monthly.
Well,
and that's the real thing is to build those networks.
I think this last year, we had people from 27 states, and we had 7 Canadian provinces. We had the Aussie guy; he was a character, Australian, but it gives you that global context and that interchange with. They aren't the biggest farms, nor are they the best, but they're lifelong learners. And they're hungry, aren't they?
Yeah.
For new ideas.
Yeah. I didn't get to go. I got COVID and didn't get to go to the peer group. What's it called?
Apex.
Apex. I didn't get to go there this year, but I look forward to that in the coming up year, and I think we can go back to Apex or to TPAP.
Yeah. Guess what? I had 3 or 4 people that were cycling through for a second time. And they said, it was invaluable because the program has changed. And they said, even you have changed. And I'm older, of course, but the whole thing is, I just find it to be one of the, I call it the Super Bowl. I know you can't say that in a promotion because it, patent and all that, but I call it the Super Bowl of learning. And you're in there for the whole week. And I'm glad that you went through the program.
Yeah, so I just went through high school education, came back to the farm, but I've taken every chance I could to get further learning, and in a lot of ways, I think that's been better for me than a 4-year degree could have been. So,
can I just share with you? I'm a university professor, and how can I put it? It's going to get challenged. Not everybody has to go to college to be successful. There's nothing wrong with vocational, technical schools. You got to be a lifelong learner. I'm kind of cynical on degrees now. I think we should have a portfolio of certificates we put together, and you got you. And you know what you do? Sometimes you start out with the technical things on your portfolio, and then you come back and take English. Then you come back and do this because then you've got to write this report up, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, now everybody's going to use ChatGPT. But the whole thing is education's lifelong. There's no saying you need 2 to 6 hours a week to stay abreast in the information-based society. And I applauded you on that. And again, I just find that some of the most educated people I've ever known had a 3rd grade education or grade 9 education.
Yeah, it's all about your desires in life.
Oh, no, it is. And that's why I was blessed to be able to get a PhD from an Ivy League school. But, one of the things is some of the best learning came early in life, but some of the best learning came throughout life.
Right. Yep. Just daily problems.
Not daily problems, daily interactions. Yeah, and just different things. Like yesterday, I'm actually going to write an article off the panel yesterday, and the panel we had the night before, with the sponsors, because there was 8 or 10 nuggets out of there that are very, very important.
Yep. So in leaving here today, if you want to leave us with one piece of wisdom for our farming audience, what would that be?
Golly gee, here we go, Kaleb. Success is measured in profits. Significance is what you give back to others. And I had this one kind of put out. Your resume, you can have all your accomplishments on your resume, but when they do your eulogy, it's about you as a person. And remember, we do a lot of belly aching in this country, but oftentimes we got the least of bellyache about than any country in the world. And agriculture is the foundation behind the pyramid of success in the United States of America or any country in the world.
Yep. And so there's no successful community without strong food and agriculture.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure. I really encourage people. We're going to have to get organized on the financials, but it'll take you beyond the financials. It'll make you think. It'll make you communicate. And I really appreciate being on these podcasts with you. And I've known you over the years, and keep doing the great work.
So the privilege is mine. So it's been we've been doing this since November and learned a lot, made some mistakes, but really feel called to educate farms, and there's a huge need out here. And you've always been both practical and inspiring to do so. So you coming on the podcast today is just humbling to me, and I'm sure glad you've been here. And
thanks for being here and meeting your team.
And surely you don't have something in those 7 pages of notes that's.
Let's put it this way. You pretty well drained me out.
Okay. So, all right, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this day's episode of the podcast on root cause. And if you would subscribe, and we would appreciate that. And if you have any other comments, please let us know. Thank you.